Before we start, I want to apologize in advance. The video you're watching isn't the Final Fantasy XI video that you were probably expecting. In fact, it's not really a game design video at all. If anything, it's sort of a commentary on the nature of making a video about Final Fantasy XI. Sort of a meta discussion that I feel is worth having. Though I typically stay away from my hot takes, it's been over a year since I last had a SoberDose, my editorial style format to cover topics like this. So if you're willing to stick around, I want to talk to you about why this video isn't the Final Fantasy XI video. This probably isn't a big revelation to you, but I love Final Fantasy XI. It's easily one of my favorite games of all times. I already made a video talking about my memories and just how important that game was to me. And that video was quite easily my most popular video on the channel by far. It has nearly 4 times as many views as my second most popular video, Dark Souls, which has nearly 4 times as many views as my more successful videos, which have 4 times as nearly many views as my average videos. That video alone tripled my subscriber count from 1,000 to 3,000. And if I'm perfectly honest, it was the video that saved the channel. For a video I had gone on record saying that it wouldn't get me more than 2,000 views in its lifetime, that was a huge piece of humble pie I had to swallow. So it didn't really surprise me when Final Fantasy XI had one subscriber appreciation month, since its release had easily become my most requested video by far. Final Fantasy XI has so much to discuss, and as far as I'm concerned, is one of the more underappreciated titles in the Final Fantasy series. It came with the revelation that there isn't enough people talking about the game. I wasn't just speaking with my own voice, but the choir of everyone who loved the game and had their own memories. As a relatively new channel trying to find an audience and create content that people enjoy, there was this opportunity to focus on being that voice and creating a historia of Final Fantasy XI. But for better or for worse, I decided not to go that route. But when the time came to create another video about Final Fantasy XI, I came across a surprising amount of mental resistance. Even after 6 months of putting distance between me and the original video, and having plenty of topics to talk about, I still found it fairly difficult to put pen to paper. It's not quite writer's block, and it's a little bit more than stage fright. Probably more than any other video, it's been one of my most challenging projects I had ever taken on. It's not like it was the first time I had followed up with something on my channel. There have been times where I split projects into multiple parts because they were just too massive for one video. There have been times I pulled from topics I covered to just talk about them in more detail. And sometimes I made videos from content cut from other videos. But this is the first time there's ever been a demand for me to cover a certain topic. I've never really felt the pressure to make a sequel before, and it was the first time I ever really contemplated the nature of a sequel. Sequels are almost cheating in a way. In a story, a lot of the groundwork has already been laid out. You don't usually have to go through the trouble of introducing your characters from scratch or explaining how your world works again. You might need to give a brief reminder, but typically you can get right to the good parts. In regards to video games, the benefits of a sequel are even more apparent. You already have a proven game design. Chances are you have a bunch of assets and possibly even an engine you can just plug things into, saving you a ton in development time and cost. The first game is the largest focus test you could ever want, allowing you to make improvements and refine the final product. Most importantly, you already have fans who enjoyed the original and are looking forward to the next installment, which eliminates a lot of the risk when creating a game. It's really no surprise that some of the most successful games are sequels. In fact, in the past 5 years, more than half of the best-selling games have been sequels to already popular titles. The reason for this has almost nothing to do with quality. Known factors are comforting. We know exactly what we're getting, so we don't have to face that uncertainty. Even if we didn't like the last game, we'll most likely buy the next one over something we don't know because as consumers, we like to make an informed decision. And the previous title provides us with much needed information. It's just how the human mind works. It's fair to say that we love sequels to the detriment of the medium itself. It's not uncommon for a lot of AAA publishers to only create sequels. New intellectual properties are in a constant battle against successors, remakes, and reboots. And when new IP is released and it is critically successful, that's no guarantee it will be a success commercially. In the rare case when a new game is successful, it often just becomes part of the cycle. It's easy to point at the publisher and blame them for only releasing uninspired sequels, or creating their own self-fulfilling prophecies by not marketing or encouraging new IP. I'll admit I'm just as much at fault as anyone else. I'm a strong proponent of trying new things. I've attempted to highlight the obscure. I've encouraged people to play games they might not have known existed. Yet, admittedly, my most anticipated titles for 2018 were either sequels or spiritual successors to games I enjoyed. Most of my favorite games are sequels, and the games I want to exist are just sequels and spiritual successors to games that I've enjoyed before. Even then, it's not reserved for just sequels. Even new IPs I've liked and been looking forward to were often sold to me as, hey, it's just like this other game you know and like. I was sold on A Hat in Time when I started seeing it compared to skill-heavy platformers. Shadows of Adam being a callback to older traditional RPGs. City Skylines being a new, good SimCity. Neo for Dark Souls. And that's on the assumption I'm not buying Okami for the third time over games like One Shot. I'm contributing just as much to the problem as anyone else. Whether or not we created our own problem is far more technical and nuanced than I can hope to tackle in an editorial. If there is a solution, I'm not the one able to provide it. But I seem to have gotten sidetracked.
Except you're smart enough to know that this is a highly edited video, and if I brought it up, there's probably a reason for it.
What does this have anything to do with it not being my Final Fantasy XI video? Well, let me answer that with another question. What did you expect? No, seriously, what did you expect? When Final Fantasy XI was revealed as the winner of SAM 2017, what were your expectations for that video, if you had any at all? When you saw this video in your subscriber feed and you realized this obviously wasn't the Final Fantasy XI video, what were your feelings? Are you disappointed that this video has had a serious tone and I haven't even made one pun yet? That this video is only loosely tied to gaming? Seriously, pause the video and write it down in the comments now or just on a piece of paper. I'll wait. Over the past couple of years, I've set a certain expectation with my videos. I want to make highly analytical, produced, and most importantly, positive videos regarding video game design and narratives. I like to make dumb and smart jokes alike, and hopefully be just as entertaining as I am educational. I'm long-winded and I love to over-explain. If you've been regularly watching, you might have even gotten to know some of my minor quirks, such as how I sound when I'm getting excited when discussing a certain subject, compared to how I sound when I get serious or even depressed. With each video, I've set a certain expectation for future videos. Beyond just informing you or entertaining you, I've created an expectation for you that's knowable and comforting. Trust me, I get it. I'm as much as a viewer as I am a creator. Expectations are good to have, but they can also be a double-edged sword. Let me take this back to Final Fantasy XI again. Or, more precisely, my first experience with Final Fantasy XIV. When I first heard about 14, I was excited. As much as I loved 11, the population was already dwindling, and it was becoming harder and harder to find parties, as most people were in the endgame by now, if they were playing at all. I wanted nothing more than to relive my days in Vana'diel again. So imagine my confusion when I joined only to discover that there wasn't a lot of punishment for failure. The lack of a more traditional job system, no element wheel, a focus more on vertical progression as opposed to 11's horizontal, flashier combat that focused more on rhythm than strategy, that the game didn't require you to spend an hour to build the perfect party just so you could grind a couple of hours for one level, the fact that all the races were named wrong. The only feeling I can compare it to is going for a drink of water and it turned out to be club soda. Whether or not Final Fantasy XIV was a better game didn't really matter at that point. I didn't want to play 14. I wanted that feeling of playing Final Fantasy XI again. The fact that I didn't get that is what soured my experience with 14. Though my complaints are still valid, they were far more critical because of my own expectations. That feeling you hypothetically wrote down might have mimicked my own during that moment. Some of you were most likely disappointed, possibly confused by the tonal shift, or frustrated that you came in expecting a fun video and got the equivalent of a lecture. I am willing to bet that maybe some had stopped the video, possibly even unsubscribed before they got to this part. And there's probably a good portion who saw the title and didn't even watch at all. That's entirely fair. I had violated an expectation that I had set. Or maybe despite that, you're pleasantly surprised. After all, despite the comfort that familiarity brings us, we don't exactly want things always the same. Resident Evil was in a place of survival horror stagnation, as sales continued to dwindle for the series until the big paradigm shift found in Resident Evil 4. It then happened again with Resident Evil 7. Sometimes we want to be challenged. We want this constant upward momentum of improvement, and we don't get that if everything always remains the same. So what does any of this have to do with it not being the Final Fantasy XI video? What do sequels and expectations, feelings have to do with anything? Well, just like some of you might have had an expectation going into this, as a creator, I had my own set of expectations for myself. When I first started this channel, I told myself I was going to be the channel I wanted to see and that I enjoyed. I make long-form videos because I got frustrated with runtimes continuously getting shorter and shorter. I'm well-researched because I got tired of videos only sourcing Wikipedia and Reddit. I tell stories and have skits because I was tired of videos just being facts and lists with no personality. But beyond just content, it was also about ethics. I wanted to respect my audience. I wasn't going to do just a bunch of clickbait. I wasn't going to treat them just as a subscriber count. I wasn't going to use my analytics as leverage for sponsorships or throw 5 ads at them within the first 10 minutes. That with every interaction, I was going to be as transparent and as genuine as possible. But most importantly, I never wanted to manipulate my audience or take advantage of them. I wanted to prove to myself that it could be done, that you could be successful without resorting to those tactics. It's the same philosophy I have with game design. I wanted to show that you didn't need to use psychological manipulation like Skinner boxes in order to make a fun game. You can't get rid of the idea of a Skinner box in game design completely. It's a reward cycle that is inherent to behavior. Going out of your way to avoid it ultimately means you're just making your game worse. But that there were ways to use it that wasn't just manipulative. As a creator, knowing where that line is can be difficult. Seeing the original Final Fantasy XI video do so well, there was a very real temptation to go back and do another. I mean, when you triple your subscriber count over the course of a few weeks, it's pretty hard not to. And there were plenty of people that would have been happy to get more. But ultimately, I wasn't making that decision based on me wanting to do more Final Fantasy XI videos. It was because I wanted to chase success. In more relatable terms, Final Fantasy XI would have became my Five Nights at Freddy's. It would have been me going after numbers and algorithms. Even when I wanted to talk more about it, I didn't. I was afraid to. I felt like it would be gazing into the abyss, and I was worried what would happen if it gazed back. I was passionately questioned by the more business-minded about that decision. I was questioned why I spend upwards of 150 hours on a video that might only get 500 views. I get questioned as to why I don't run ads in the middle of my videos. I've gotten questioned as to why I don't pad out my channel with easier to produce content in between larger videos. If nothing else, just to fight YouTube's injustice between demonetization and algorithms. Even in a situation where I can get more views and subscribers while I can talk about a game that I love, and fans get more content that they have been starved for by the general media for a decade, almost everyone would benefit. Yet I don't, because it skirts dangerously close to taking the channel in a direction I didn't want to go down. It all sounds very virtuous. It's the narrative of a single YouTuber fighting against all odds, standing by his morals in an increasingly corrupt world and succeeding, fighting temptation and taking the more challenging and difficult path. But I'm not a hero. By standing on those morals, I've discounted the passion of hundreds of people who watch, subscribe, and contribute to the channel. I put the burden of my survival on wonderful friends and generous supporters. There is a person who lives 2,000 miles away that I am no closer to meeting than I was 8 months ago. All for a battle where I might be the only one who is really passionate about fighting. So which of these was the right decision? Am I a better person for sticking with my own morals? Should I just stay humble and not worry about things like subscribers or views and only focus on what I want to make and keeping the vision of my channel? Or should I have put my own feelings aside and do what's best for the channel? The answer to that is, I don't know. I may never know the answer. Chances are the solution isn't one of these extremes, but somewhere in the middle. Sort of like sequels, really. The idea of a sequel, a spiritual successor, a remake, or a reboot isn't inherently bad or manipulative. Sometimes there is more stories to tell or things to discuss. Sometimes you want to improve on what you create. Sometimes you need to provide that sense of comfort or stability. There is nothing wrong with creating something just because people enjoyed the original so much and you want to give them more. Though it could just as easily be used to take advantage of that excitement. It can be used as a cynical cash grab, treated as an obligation, or, at worst, just be pandering and manipulative. It's the same action with different motivation. On the flip side, wanting more of something that you enjoy doesn't make you an abettor to silencing creativity. Just because I want Bushido Blade 3 doesn't diminish the contributions that other fighting games have made. And there's nothing wrong with buying each Dynasty Warrior release if you enjoy it. We are only human after all. It's when our expectations become so high and that we demand things never change or evolve. When we want things to only comfort us and never challenge us. When we want content to cater specifically to our needs and never the needs of others. That's when it becomes a problem. The reason this isn't a Final Fantasy XI video is because I had to struggle with that. As the channel grows, I found my own expectations becoming higher and higher. I didn't want to release just another Final Fantasy XI video to satisfy some unspoken obligation. I wanted it to be just as good, if not better, than the original. I wanted to talk about all the things I couldn't, all the things that were left on the cutting room floor. The world building, the music, the characters and stories, the references and influences, the rise and fall of popularity and the game's legacy. It didn't just take me 2 years of writing a script for Final Fantasy XI. It required 2 years of experience to fully express my love for the game. I wasn't just talking about design. I was talking about how that design affected me. I talked about some of the most impactful moments. I talked about what that game meant to me. I put everything I had into that video. I searched the very depths of my soul for what made that game so enjoyable to me. In the end, I had said everything I wanted to say. With the video I was working on, I was desperately trying to rekindle that nostalgia, trying to invoke that same feeling and emotion, only to realize I couldn't. In a way, it was me expecting Final Fantasy XIV to be 11 all over again. I was setting an expectation for this next video that it could never live up to. In a way, I'm kind of glad, because if it were so easy to recreate, then those feelings and memories wouldn't have any value. Just like how Final Fantasy XI wouldn't have meant as much to me if 14 would have been the same game. It's difficult to accept that sometimes. When things make us feel good, we want more of it. With nostalgia especially, we want every opportunity to relive those moments. We want to party in Valkyrie Dunes again. We want to be reminded of our first time getting our Chocobo license, or riding on an airship. We want to feel that overwhelming surge of excitement of reaching level 75 after years of leveling. These are all moments that we'll never be able to relive again. While that's sad that we might never feel that sense of pleasure, the truth is, if you could, then it wouldn't mean as much to begin with. Nostalgia is bittersweet. It is a feeling of joy wrapped in a sense of longing. With technology, it's even easier to indulge in it, but it becomes so easy to become addicted to it and lose sight of everything else. When I played Final Fantasy XI, I knew it was a good game, but I never realized 13 years later that the game was going to have such an impact on my life. I never thought I would want to level in Valkyrie Dunes again, or spend 40 minutes traveling to a party, but now they've become fond memories. But if we're constantly seeking to relive those moments, we'll lose sight of what's important, which is having experiences now that we can be nostalgic for later. This isn't the Final Fantasy XI video. That video already exists, and I will never be able to make another one like it. I will never be able to recapture that same nostalgia that you might have felt watching that with any other video, regardless of what I talk about. However, now that I'm sort of free of my own expectations, there will be another Final Fantasy XI video. And while it might not capture those same feelings, maybe it can stand on its own. After all, we don't build character if we only experience the same thing all the time. Thank you very much for watching and for your patience with the Final Fantasy XI video. It's going to come out soon, I promise. I just felt like this topic was very relevant with recent events. So until then, I have some other videos to tie you over. If you would like to see me cover more personal topics like this, you know what to do. Hit that like button if you liked it, the dislike button if you didn't, and let me know why in the comments while you're at it. Special thanks to all my patrons who support the show and allow me the ability to be able to do what I do without compromising my vision for the channel. And a very special thank you to Aki for her generous contribution. So until next time, this is SoberDwarf reminding you that gaining experience builds character.